The first thing that you need to know about me is that I am absolutely obsessed with history. I have been since I was a child. I am a lover of stories, and because of that, I have been intrinsically drawn to history. This drive caused me to spend much of my childhood researching history, specifically military history, and watching channels like Military and History Channel on my free time. Not really something that most 10-year-olds do. And I love this because I really only thought of it as stories. However, as I grew older and entered middle school and high school, I began to get bored with the textbooks provided at school and the TV shows that were on the channels that I like to watch, so I began to desire for something more. So on New Year's Eve of 8th grade, I made a decision. I decided that my new tradition for New Year's resolutions would be to select specific topics of history, wars, regions, time periods to spend the whole year studying. Fast forward 4 years, and it is senior year of high school, 2014. It is also the 100th anniversary of the First World War. And to commemorate that milestone, I decided that I would spend this year studying the Great War. And man, did that really make me face reality. In my studies of history, I had become familiar with the absolute horror that is warfare. But I'd never really studied World War One, and when I began to really delve into the story, there was nothing that I had ever read that was like it. It was hell. Machine guns, artillery, shells, barbed wire, corpses from years ago, mud, gas, all of this made for life a terrible soup. However, it wasn't necessarily the horror stories that scared me the most, but rather the parallels to the world prior to the First World War to ours. For half a century, there hadn't been a major conflict between two European powers, let alone the entire continent. And this meant that nobody was really prepared for the scale of warfare that they would face, much like the world that we live in today. So, in late February, early March, when I woke up to see news that soldiers dressed in Russian uniforms had invaded Ukrainian territory, I was terrified. I mean, all that it had taken to launch the world into the carnage that was the First World War was for some small Serbian assassin to kill an Austrian prince, and then the world went crazy. So I went to school, and I really wanted to discuss the absolute abject horror that was the potential of a new world war, and nobody seemed interested. This lack of interest in geopolitics, while understandable, didn't really make me that happy. However, it was better than what my friend Austin thought. First, you need to know that my friend Austin is, best way to put it, gung-ho patriotic. So when I addressed this situation to him, his response was that the United States should show the Russians who's boss. Which, while I admire his patriotic guts, how I really wanted to respond was that all bullets care about guts is that they can rip them out. However, I bit my tongue because I only knew that this would cause a really loud argument. So I remained to really be the only one who seemed to be scared by this recent event. That was, at least until I listened to the most recent episode of my political podcast, Common Sense. In it, the host, Dan Carlin, seemed just as utterly horrified and scared as I was, and he made a really good point. The fact is, our government is absolutely horrified of the potential for a terrorist attack or the potential for terrorists to get their hands on a nuclear warhead. However, the likeliness that this would happen is very slim. However, it is well known fact that Russia is one of the few countries in the world that could potentially match us in nuclear armaments and military power. If we went to war with Russia, it would be a certainty that at some point they would fire missiles. with multiple nuclear warheads that are far more powerful than any terrorists could get their hands on, and they would fire them at us. Yet, for the past decade or so, our government, if not actively, backhandedly has been aggressive and dismissive of the Russian government, which makes any group of people want to save face. So, because of these events and that realization, I came to a decision of my own. Even though I am obsessed with military history and think it is absolutely fascinating, I will forever stand for peace. And I will do this through writing history. Because the best way to explain to people about the horror that could happen in a global war is to talk to them about the ones that have occurred.